The crowd's roar was deafening, a living, breathing force that seemed to pulse through the arena walls. Camera flashes burst like distant lightning, illuminating a sea of anticipation and frenzy. Reporters scrambled over each other, microphones thrust forward, desperate for a glimpse, a quote, anything to fuel the media wildfire that had been raging for weeks. This wasn't just a fight. This was a spectacle, a clash of titans that had ignited imaginations across the globe. Mike Tyson, the man whose fists had once been feared as the deadliest weapons in boxing, stood backstage with a calmness that seemed unnatural. His gaze was distant, his breathing steady, like a predator waiting in the shadow before the strike. Years had passed since his prime, but the intensity remained, coiled within him like a spring ready to snap. Age had refined his power, sharpened his mind, but the hunger, oh, that was unchanged. And tonight, the world would see if it was enough. The announcement had stunned everyone. Tyson coming out of retirement wasn't unheard of. He had done it before, thrilling fans with flashes of his old ferocity. But this, facing off against a man who wasn't even a boxer? The skepticism was immediate, but so was the fascination. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, wrestler, actor, global superstar, was stepping into the ring, not for a scripted event, not for entertainment, but for a genuine fight. The Rock had proven himself in countless arenas, his physique sculpted to perfection, his endurance legendary. But a real fight? Against one of the most dangerous men in boxing history? It sounded like madness. But The Rock had never been one to back down from a challenge. His training montage had become viral gold images of him pounding heavy bags until his knuckles bled, sparring with world-class fighters, pushing his body beyond any reasonable limit. Commentators debated endlessly over whether it was dedication or desperation. But one thing was clear, he wasn't treating this like some publicity stunt. This was real to him. It was personal. No one could quite pinpoint how the rivalry had begun. Some traced it back to an offhand comment Tyson had made during an interview, dismissing celebrity fighters as all flash, no substance. Others insisted it was The Rock's own words, some veiled jab about the old guard needing to make way for the new generation. But if there was true animosity between them, it had been well concealed. What couldn't be hidden, though, was the mutual respect that had slowly given way to something else, something fierce and unrelenting. The announcement of the fight had been the spark, and the blaze it unleashed spread far beyond the sports world. Fight purists called it a circus act, a gimmick. But there was a deeper allure that drew people in, an almost primal need to witness the unexpected. The Rock, larger than life in every sense, was determined to prove he was more than just charisma and muscle. Tyson, driven by a relentless need to reclaim lost glory, sought to remind the world why he had once been the most feared man on the planet. Their paths to the ring couldn't have been more different. Tyson had risen from the depths of poverty and violence, his rage tempered into skill under the guidance of Q's D'Amato. The Rock, born into wrestling royalty, had built his empire on charm and willpower, turning every setback into another step toward the top. Both men were fighters in their own right, shaped by struggle, molded by pain. As fight night approached, the anticipation grew unbearable. Tickets sold out within minutes, streaming services crashed under the weight of demand. Sponsors lined up, their logos plastered across every available inch of the arena. Celebrities posted their predictions, analysts dissected every scrap of training footage. And the fighters themselves? They stayed silent, their preparation consuming every waking moment. Tyson's camp was a mix of old-school discipline and cutting-edge technology. His trainers drilled him relentlessly, testing his reflexes, his timing, his power. He returned to his roots, the brutal simplicity of his training echoing the methods that had made him a champion. But there was a wisdom to his approach now, a patience that had replaced the recklessness of his youth. The Rock's preparation was a different beast entirely. His routine blurred the line between Hollywood spectacle and genuine combat training. He enlisted the best coaches money could buy, former champions, MMA legends, experts from disciplines he'd never even heard of. His regimen was punishing, his determination unyielding. Critics could mock him all they wanted, but anyone who saw him work knew one truth: The Rock wasn't playing games. Fight night arrived with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. The arena was packed to its limits, the air thick with sweat, excitement, and something sharper, an electric anticipation that bordered on fear. Every screen in the world seemed to be tuned in, from packed sports bars to quiet living rooms. It was as if the entire planet had paused, holding its breath. Tyson walked to the ring with his trademark stoicism, his face a mask of unreadable focus. Cheers and boos mingled into a chaotic symphony, but he seemed to hear none of it. To him, the crowd was nothing more than background noise, distant and irrelevant. His fists twitched at his sides, eager, impatient. The Rock's entrance was a spectacle, a performance as much as a declaration. His music blared, his presence commanding, every step purposeful. Yet beneath the bravado, his eyes held something raw, something real. He wasn't here to entertain. He was here to fight. The referee's instructions were a blur, drowned out by the roaring crowd. Tyson's gaze locked onto the Rock's, searching for weakness, for hesitation. But the Rock stared back with a determination so fierce it seemed to burn. The bell was moments away from ringing, and all the build-up, all the preparation, had boiled down to this one moment. But as the fighters braced themselves for the opening bell, something happened that neither man could have predicted. A sudden commotion erupted from the far side of the arena. Shouts, gasps, security personnel scrambling toward the chaos. Tyson's eyes narrowed, his instincts sharpened by years of experience. The Rock glanced over his shoulder, his expression shifting from focus to confusion. Whatever was happening, it was enough to momentarily steal the attention of everyone in the arena. And as the fighters stood there, their bodies coiled like springs, the answer to the mystery remained just out of reach. The world had tuned in for a fight, but now something far stranger was unfolding before their eyes. The crowd's frenzy shifted into confusion, excitement curdling into something uneasy. Heads swiveled toward the far side of the arena, where security guards struggled to contain a sudden, violent surge. Tyson's gaze remained fixed on the chaos, his muscles tensing instinctively. The Rock's expression flickered from annoyance to concern, his eyes scanning the commotion with a sharpness that suggested he was already calculating the threat. Voices boomed through the speakers, officials barking orders, their attempts at calming the crowd lost to the swelling noise. Cameras swung toward the disturbance, their lenses capturing the chaos but failing to explain it. What had been a singular focus on the two legends in the ring now fractured into confusion, the atmosphere poisoned by uncertainty. Tyson's trainer edged close, his voice urgent. "Ignore it. Stay sharp. This is just another distraction. Focus." But Tyson's instincts refused to settle. The energy in the arena had shifted, the anticipation replaced by something raw and unpredictable. Then came the sound, sharp, unmistakable. A gunshot. Or something that sounded far too much like one. The reaction was immediate. Screams tore through the air, people trampling over each other in a desperate scramble for the exits. The arena's pulse had turned frantic, its orderly chaos devolving into madness. Security guards fought to maintain order, their voices drowned out by the escalating panic. The Rock's brow furrowed, his posture rigid, every muscle prepared to spring into action. This wasn't part of the show. Whatever was happening, it was real, and it was spiraling out of control. Tyson's eyes never left the crowd, his expression unreadable but undeniably alert. Years spent navigating danger both inside and outside, the ring had honed his instincts to a blade's edge. And right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very, very wrong. Officials gestured frantically, trying to corral the fighters back towards safety. But Tyson didn't budge, his gaze locked on a section of the arena where the commotion had erupted. The Rock seemed equally unwilling to retreat, his fists clenched, jaw tight. For all his Hollywood success, there was a fighter's soul beneath the polished exterior, and it burned brighter now than ever. "Mike, come on." A voice called from behind him, but Tyson ignored it. His eyes narrowed, picking out details even amid the chaos. A group of figures moving with a purpose that didn't match the panic around them. Men dressed like spectators, but far too coordinated, their movements precise, deliberate. The Rock caught Tyson's gaze, and for the first time, the two men exchanged something more than mere competition. A shared understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of the danger that had suddenly engulfed them both. Whatever animosity or rivalry existed between them was irrelevant now. This was survival. Before either man could act, the arena's lights flickered, then died altogether. Darkness swallowed the crowd, and the chaos escalated into outright hysteria. Voices shouted over one another, some pleading, others demanding answers that no one seemed capable of providing. The only light came from scattered cell phones, their screens glowing dimly against the enveloping blackness. Tyson felt his way along the ropes, his senses heightened by the absence of sight. The ring, once a sanctuary of controlled violence, now felt exposed, vulnerable. But he could hear them, the men moving through the darkness with an efficiency that didn't belong to mere spectators. The Rock's voice broke through the din, calm and commanding. "Tyson, we need to get out of here. Now." It was the first time he had spoken to him directly, the competitive edge stripped away and replaced by something far more urgent. Tyson nodded, his voice low but steady. "You see them too, don't you?" "Yeah." The Rock's response was curt, his breathing controlled despite the madness erupting around them. "They're not here for a fight. Not the kind we planned anyway." Their rivalry had been left behind, buried beneath the sudden reality that had crashed into their world like a wrecking ball. Tyson moved with purpose, his mind switching gears from competitor to survivor. Every instinct told him that whatever was happening, it was only the beginning. But just as they began to retreat, a burst of light flooded the arena. Blinding, overwhelming, forcing eyes to shut against the sudden assault. And when Tyson opened his eyes, his body tensed, muscles coiled and ready. What he saw left him frozen, the sheer audacity of it twisting his thoughts into knots. Men clad in tactical gear had swarmed the ring, their faces obscured by helmets, weapons raised and aimed. But they weren't pointing at the fighters. Instead, their attention was locked onto something above something suspended from the rafters, a shape obscured by shadows, but unmistakably human. The crowd's panic had reached a fever pitch, but the armed men moved with precision, their orders crackling through unseen earpieces. Tyson's gaze shifted to the Rock, whose expression mirrored his own disbelief. Whatever threat had emerged, it was far more intricate than either of them had anticipated. And somehow, in the midst of it all, they were being drawn deeper into a conflict they had never agreed to join. A voice, harsh and clipped, blasted over the arena's sound system. "Everyone remain where you are. This is a matter of national security. All exits are sealed. Cooperation is mandatory." Tyson's fists clenched at his sides, the fighter's instinct demanding action even as the unknown swirled around him like a gathering storm. The Rock's gaze swept the arena, his expression unreadable but unmistakably calculating. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was something else entirely. But just as Tyson prepared to move, a sudden explosion tore through the arena's eastern entrance. Smoke billowed upward, the force of the blast rattling the air, sending shockwaves rippling across the stands. The tactical units swiveled toward the new threat, their attention divided and their movements frantic. And in that moment of chaos, Tyson realized something chilling. Whoever was behind this, they hadn't come for him or the Rock. They were here for something much bigger. And whatever it was, it had just been unleashed. The explosion's aftermath left the arena trembling, a stunned silence crashing down over the madness. Smoke twisted through the air, its acrid scent stinging eyes and throats alike. Tyson moved before he even realized it, his instincts firing on all cylinders. Every nerve felt electrified, his senses sharpening to a blade's edge. He saw the Rock pushing through the chaos, his powerful frame cutting through the disoriented crowd as if nothing could slow him down. Security forces scrambled to contain the breach, their voices tangled in frantic commands. But Tyson had already pieced together the truth. This wasn't just some random attack. It was orchestrated, deliberate, and whoever was behind it had planned for every contingency. The swarming guards, the blinding lights, the misdirection. It was all designed to confuse, to create just enough noise to cover up what really mattered. Tyson's gaze shifted back to the figure suspended from the rafters. The smoke had begun to clear, and now he could see it was a man bound and unconscious, his body swaying gently in the lingering haze. But it wasn't just any man. Tyson recognized him, an influential politician known for his crusade against corruption within the highest levels of government. If someone wanted him silenced, there were easier ways. Public spectacle, though, sent a message. The Rock's voice cut through Tyson's thoughts, rough and urgent. We need to get him down. Now. There was no hesitation, no trace of rivalry. Just the kind of determination Tyson respected. They moved in unison, Tyson's brute force matched by the Rock's precision. The crowd had thinned as people poured out through whatever exits they could find. But the tactical teams hadn't followed. They remained locked onto the figure above, their weapons raised, their commands growing sharper, more desperate. Drop the hostage! One of the guards barked, his rifle trembling slightly in his grip. But Tyson saw through the fade. They weren't here to rescue anyone. They were here to eliminate a loose end. Tyson met the Rock's eyes, a mutual understanding passing between them like a spark. Whatever their differences, whatever grudges had fueled their rivalry, none of it mattered now. They were in the middle of something far bigger than themselves. The Rock scaled the scaffolding with an agility that seemed impossible for his size, his hands moving with a speed that came from more than just training. Tyson kept watch below, his fists clenched, ready to intercept anyone who dared interfere. The roar of the crowd had faded, replaced by the harsh metallic clank of the Rock's movements above. But then Tyson noticed something else movement from the shadows. Men dressed in black, their presence almost ghostly against the chaos. They were closing in, their attention fixed on the Rock as he worked to cut the politician free. Tyson's blood ignited, his fists finding their mark with brutal efficiency as he intercepted the nearest attacker. The fight was raw, vicious. Tyson's fists moved like pistons, each strike driven by purpose rather than rage. He knocked one man out cold before spinning to catch another with a blow to the gut that left him gasping for air. But more kept coming, their coordination too precise to be anything but professional. Above, the Rock had managed to free the politician, lowering him carefully to the ground. But there was no time for relief. The tactical units were regrouping, their weapons sweeping across the scene with a mechanical detachment that sent a chill down Tyson's spine. This whole thing was a setup, the Rock growled, his voice seething with a fury that Tyson felt echoing through his own veins. They wanted us here. Wanted everyone watching. Tyson's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. The way the lights had cut out, the way security had been stretched thin just before the explosion. It wasn't meant to end in bloodshed. It was meant to end in spectacle. To paint a certain picture for the world to see. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on. Tyson and the Rock weren't just fighters. They were survivors. And they weren't about to be used as pawns. Before Tyson could voice his thoughts, a voice crackled over the arena's sound system once more, now laced with barely concealed panic. Abort. All units, abort. The words sent a ripple of confusion through the armed men, their calculated movements now fractured by uncertainty. Tyson's fists tightened, Whoever was pulling the strings had just lost control of their own operation. And the realization hit him with the force of a freight train. They needed the world to see us fighting, to distract from whatever they were trying to do. The Rock's voice was strained but steady, his mind working through the implications as quickly as Tyson's. But now the cameras are catching something else. Tyson glanced up, noticing the news helicopters hovering above, their lenses zoomed in on the chaos below. The truth was being broadcast live, every brutal detail captured for millions to witness. The very thing their enemies had tried to manipulate was now their downfall. Security forces began to retreat, their sudden withdrawal as chaotic as the attack itself. Whoever had orchestrated this had lost their grip on the narrative, their carefully constructed plot unraveling before their eyes. Tyson felt a fierce grin break across his face. Whatever game had been played, he and The Rock had just rewritten the rules. But as the last of the attackers melted away into the night, Tyson knew their victory was far from complete. The truth had only begun to surface, and the people behind it weren't like to give up so easily. The Rock helped the politician to his feet, his expression tight but relieved. Tyson caught his gaze, the shared experience forging something stronger than any rivalry. "They're not done with us," The Rock said, his voice low and measured. "You know that, right?" Tyson nodded, his fists finally unclenching. "Let them come. We've already shown the world what really matters." As the arena lights slowly flickered back to life, Tyson realized something else.